All right. Hello and welcome to the WWE Recap Show. We are doing a special show tonight where we will be recapping our 4 weeks of starting to watch WWE Smackdown again. Dom and I took some time off here. Haven't watched wrestling in a very long time, especially in the WWE world. And I said, Dom, let's give it a whirl. Let's see what we think. So we are 4 weeks in. Dom, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I am sort of new to the WWE universe. It's been an interesting 4 weeks, and let's get into the meat and potatoes of the show here, John. Don't bury the lead. Give us your 0 to 5 star rating. What's this first month of WWE SmackDown been for you?
Thanks, Dom. I'll tell you what, man. 0 to 5 stars. Let's make them bananas.
Okay.
6 maximum bananas. So I'm going to go ahead and say it's been 4 bananas out of 6. Maybe
Okay.
3.5 out of 5, roughly, in the star world. So I'll go ahead and say it's roughly 3.5 stars, 4 bananas out of 6. Pretty good so far. Really liking a lot of the stuff that WWE has done from a very simple standpoint of following a good format of a show. They introduce the show, they give you an idea of what the main event will be, and the main event has consistently delivered. So I like that formatting that they've followed so far, and it kind of makes you look forward to the main event of that show. I might be a little biased. You might be a little biased because we specifically like the main event and talk about it. So we're going to grade on a curve here. There's going to be some stuff in the middle of the show, the beginning of the show that we don't care about or we didn't really watch. But that main event's got to deliver, and so far it has. I don't want to give it a 5 out of 5 because, there are still some things that can be worked on. But overall, pretty good. How about you, Dom? What do you think so far?
I would also put it into the 3.5 to 4 star range. I look at it more, especially me being so new to a lot of the current WWE wrestlers, or superstars as they're called, wrestlers and personalities, other people who appear on camera. Um, I will still give it that star rating because I'm impressed with it as a wrestling TV show. I think they do a really good job, and we'll go more in depth with this as we progress. But I think they do a really good job with their lighting and their camera work, and I think it makes for a really good television viewing experience. I hope it translates well for the live crowd as well, because also if you're the paying customer there, I hope you're getting the live experience and enjoying it. But sitting at home watching streaming TV, I'm getting enough out of it in 2 hours. I think it's a fast enough moving show. I can follow it. The people who I may remember because they've been around a long time. It's neat reconnecting with them. But the people I'm getting to learn after a few weeks, enough stuff is making sense that I'm glad you asked me to do this. I'm glad we're watching WWE SmackDown. It's something I look forward to now every Friday, and I've seen enough in the first 4 weeks where I'm looking forward to continuing.
Yeah. There's definitely been times, like, if you think of it like this, we both don't watch it anymore. So there was a breaking point, right? Where we were like, okay, I can't watch this anymore. This is terrible. Like, there's something that happened, I think, pre AEW, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. It had gotten pretty lousy, and like all the baby faces were getting heckled, and all the heels were lame, and they had been kind of running the same format and same template for a very long time. And it was just like, dude, I can't watch this anymore. Like, this is unbearable. But to go back to it now and to see how far it's come, I'd say pretty good so far. Impressive stuff.
That's interesting. You brought that up. You said that at some point you stepped away because the product wasn't as interesting. I stepped away because I started doing other things. I started working evenings, and it became less convenient for me to tune in to the television program. And then, you know, getting rid of my TV service because I just wasn't watching a lot, and having it be more difficult to find full programs to watch online. And it wasn't interesting enough to me where I really went and pursued that. But so you and I have different reasons why we stepped away from the WWE as well. So maybe from your standpoint, can you expand? So this seems to be your lead story here. Can you expand on what you're seeing now in a little more detail? And maybe it's the mat work, maybe it's the storylines, maybe it's some individual wrestlers who you're really connecting with. What is different now than what you remember from when you stepped away?
Great question. And I'm going to great question you
Okay. You
because
can answer a question with a question here?
yes, I'm going to do the interview thing where like
Okay.
the interviewer asks you a question, you say great question, is just to stall a little bit.
Okay.
Um, I'd say overall, um, they have a really good champ. And that really drives the product all the time for me. Is like, who is the champ? And it's interesting before because the champ wasn't really around. Whether it was Brock Lesnar wasn't really around, and then also when Roman Reigns was a babyface, was pretty lousy.
Okay.
Now Roman Reigns years later, as I'm watching it as a heel with Paul Heyman, it's like night and day. Like this guy um, doesn't have to rely too much on his promo skills, which were at the time always a big issue when he was a babyface. They had him memorizing the lines, and it was like that would always be kind of an issue. But now
Okay.
he can rely on Heyman, who does all the talking for him, and the entire bloodline is, I mean, it's a badass group. It's just like you got Jimmy and Jay, who have gone from like, you know, Rikishi's kids to these guys seem like prisoners. Like they're either living the gimmick or really close to it. Cause I'm like, dude, when they start yelling and they start barking at people, I'm like, they seem like inmates. So really, and
They're
then
excitable guys, you know.
yeah, they seem like they legit did some time. And I don't know
Okay.
how they got into that character or what they did, but like it's believable. And then with Roman Reigns being kind of like the cocky heel, but he isn't saying too much, and he's like this big badass. And then, you know, squirrely little Paul Heyman doing his super long promos about God knows what, but every time he talks, you're just kind of captivated. Um, and then, so you know, I guess to really, I'm kind of rambling here, but to discuss, you know, what I think is an improvement is the champ is very good. How about you?
That's
What do you think would be an improvement for you, or what would be like something not necessarily an improvement, but why you think that it's a strong product today?
a strong product today for me. Um, I was an old WCW fan
Nice.
in the Monday Night Wars.
Mhm.
Um, and WCW, in order to have that more real feel to it, stuff was darker and more sinister. That's not a great TV product. I'm impressed. Like the WWE, their lighting and their camera work is so good that I think it more often than not it makes it tougher on the performers in some regard because you know if the camera's right on you and you make a mistake, it's magnified. But on
Yeah.
the other hand, It's a better overall product. I like how the days of the arena being half empty and then purposely making it dark so that you couldn't see at home that the arena was half empty. Those days are over. Maybe they're still pumping in the crowd noise. I don't know. I'm not there. But the days of them trying to hide the live venue, and maybe this was a WCW thing, especially early when they were running 5,000 seat arenas and maybe only selling 3,000 tickets. But the days of trying to hide what the venue looks like, those seem to be over, especially for the WWE. I like that things are well lit. I like that their hard camera and their ring is set up so that there's plenty of room on the right side of your screen where the announce table is.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of room on the left side where the entrance ramp is. So they've already set it up where there's plenty of room for the action to spill out of the ring.
Yeah.
So it's part of their, stuff is not going to be contained in the squared circle, and they've already planned for it. So it's not just that there's a spotlight on the ring. Their stage is bigger than the ring, and it's all very well lit.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that WWE does, and this is because they're just first and foremost a pro wrestling company. Eric Bischoff has admitted this, former WCW VP and big executive there. He has admitted that back when they were doing WCW, they had some problems with their camera work because they didn't have WCW camera operators. They had guys who would just rotate in from the rest of Turner Sports. So you're covering baseball, and then, you're coming over and you're doing a wrestling thing. You're covering basketball, you're coming over doing a wrestling. Maybe you're covering golf, you're coming over doing a wrestling gig. And there are things about wrestling that you have to know to shoot wrestling really well. And the WWE guys, because all they do is wrestling, they do this well. And so my overall impression, why it's good, I think that it's a really well-produced TV wrestling show, regardless of, and we'll get into later. I know you're, especially with your background, amateur wrestler, and maybe I'm spilling the beans here. You have an amateur wrestling background. You've done indie pro wrestling in the ring as a wrestler. So you can speak more to mat wrestling and what's going on in there and how well they're doing it. But from my perspective, just how they've set up everything and how they've framed it, I think it's an interesting, engaging TV show.
Yeah. That's a great point. I didn't even really think about that, but the lighting and I would say like the lighting in the actual arena that they have there does make it seem a little bit more lively. And yeah, the overall production, it feel like, because you are watching it live and it feels like there is like an energy in those stadiums or arenas rather. And, sometimes, you'll watch a wrestling show and they're just tanking. And I mean, maybe like, some of these people that aren't TNA or maybe not, maybe I think some stuff like with TNA kind of reminds me of that. Like years ago, when people were like, you got to watch TNA, and then you'd watch it, be like, yeah, dude, this is 500 people at this, or it's 1,000 people. And
oh man, could I go off on TNA because I liked a lot of their wrestlers, but their TV show brought it down. It's like the opposite of what the WWE is doing for me now. But
right.
Continue. I know what you mean totally, but yeah, continue your line, please. I want to hear this.
One of the things is with like TNA, or if you look at one of the things about pro wrestling in general, is the coolest thing I think is the crowd reaction and the fact that it is live and there's that energy really adds to it. Because when that is gone, it does feel like, just guys dancing around with nobody watching. When there isn't that energy, you're just like, what is this? But like when the crowd's into it, it kind of makes it a lot more compelling. So as a result of that, when I talk about TNA and nobody's watching, the work can be fantastic. But if nobody's watching and like only a couple people are sort of into it, then it kind of dies on me. Whereas WWE, like, they know how to draw a big house, and there's a lot of people in the arena, and I don't know if it's the angles or what it is, but the crowd seems into it. So that would
Yeah.
be so. Oh, interesting. Let's hear a hot take, not a hot take, but let's hear
Okay.
your perspective on TNA.
My perspective on TNA is I was really interested in their in-ring product, but like you're saying, especially once, gosh, whatever the energy company with the Carter family was bought it. Um,
I know that
they
it
were
got
just running it out of a soundstage. They're running it. Did you just say what was it? Panda Energy?
no, I don't know who bought it. I know they were bought out. You're right. Because it was
Yeah. So,
shocking that anybody even bought it. You're like, wait, what? Somebody
but
bought this?
like Jeff Jarrett started it, and then somebody bought it from him, and they were basically running it out of. I don't know if it was Universal Studios in Florida, but it was kind of like an amusement in the park. Like,
Okay.
hey, do you want to watch a taping of a wrestling show? And so what happened is you've got people in this, and it's not the size of the arena that was a problem for them, because you can have a great live crowd in a small venue.
Mm,
It was the fact that it was people coming in to watch the wrestling show who really weren't hardcore wrestling fans. Like if you go to a WWE show today, especially if you're close to the ring, you've paid a lot of money to be there. You are probably invested in the product. And TNA was getting a lot of people in their crowd who weren't really into pro wrestling.
that's funny. So it's just people down in Florida with their kids, and like they got like they went to Disney World a couple days, and then they're in Universal Studios, and then they're
Yeah.
like, suddenly they're like, okay, we'll check out this wrestling thing, I guess. And it's just way harder to hook that audience versus people that are actually interested in pro wrestling. It's just like, who wants to watch it? It's here.
Yeah. And so, if you were trying to get into the show feeding off the reaction of the crowd, I maybe TNA was tough to do that. And
Mm,
maybe even some of the old WCW shows, because I mean, studio wrestling was a big deal when it came to TV, especially if you see some of the old WWF tapes of the big shows they ran in like Madison Square Garden, the Boston Garden, anywhere. It is tough to put that on video. It's a better TV product to get into just a big TV studio and do that. So I'm
mm,
not really knocking the studio wrestling experience.
mm-hmm.
Um, but if you're the kind of person who likes the live crowd to be into the show, then you're not always, that's hit or miss on some of these TV shows. But I think the WWE, at least it looks like the crowd is into it on the show. And maybe that's because they've gone through the trouble of lighting it well. It's like if they were hiding it from you, you'd be like, what are there, 10 people there? Like only
Mm-hmm.
a few people on the hard camera care. But the fact that they're willing to show the arena and kind of, brag about having filled the arena, um, that's visually interesting, I think. And you and I approach it a little differently. If you don't mind, I want to pivot to your main thing because I want to ask you a very important question about Roman Reigns.
Let's do it. I'm ready
Okay,
for all questions.
you are ready for Roman Reigns. Um, One of the things you mentioned was that the champions years ago, when it was Brock Lesnar or someone else who you weren't seeing a lot, I've been back to WWE Smackdown for 4 weeks now. I've seen Roman Reigns on exactly 2 of the 4 shows. He has not wrestled either time, hasn't even fake wrestled, like just been in a brawl or something.
Wow.
He hasn't wrestled either time. I've gone 4 weeks here. 2 of the shows, as far as we know, Roman wasn't there, and Sami Zayn was just on the phone with him. It's like, oh, it's Roman. It's Roman. He's on the phone. He wants us to. He wants to make sure that Sammy's doing his Sammy thing. Roman's not even appearing on camera, so he hasn't wrestled, and he hasn't even been on screen in 2 out of the 4 weeks. Is it just because it's been only 4 weeks? Like, how do you square that? You like Roman Reigns as the champ. You like the pairing with Paul Heyman. You like the bloodline. How long can they drag this out before you get bored with not seeing the champ do something on the TV show?
Yeah. Um, that is a good point. Maybe he was a little bit more overexposed because they had him doing all the promos and they had him like wrestling and all the tag stuff. So maybe because he is a special attraction now, you're like, oh, okay, Roman Reigns is here, so that just makes it a little bit better.
Okay.
But I think I'm more so interested in the fact that he's much he's a much stronger heel. Like he was always a fine worker. He was always that was never the problem. It was never his in
Okay.
ring work.
Okay.
That was never the issue. Just like he never felt like a champ as a baby face, like or one that was too over. And they kept like ramming him down your throat, and you're just like the crowd was booing and rejecting him, and then they just kept going with it anyway. I mean, they did that for
Hmm.
years, and I mean, they paid the price because they have a competitor in AEW right now that's legit, and that would have never happened if they were just like, no, this is our champ. You're just gonna have to deal with it. So I
Okay.
think they've moved in a way in a direction, making him heel, having his two awesome worker cousins be in his stable, and then Paul Heyman just Paul Heyman, you go out there, you shoot a promo, everybody's gonna eat it up. And I think Heyman has it. I've seen him on the pay per view, and I saw him on one show, but I guess he hasn't really been there too much. But um, you know, the Usos and Sami Zayn are definitely holding it down. That whole dynamic, I think, pretty much is carrying the show right now.
Okay. In ring work. What do you mentioned that you remember Roman Reigns being fine in the ring? I haven't seen him wrestle. What
Whoa.
was his style back then, and what do you expect his style will be now? Like, did he have a particular babyface style that you think he's going to have to change? What was it?
It's a little move of Doomy, right? Like he's got the big moves that he's got the spear, he's got the Superman punch, he's got like all the finisher stuff, but it works in the false finishes and the main events. But he also is pretty physical, and I
Okay.
mean, I'll transition to the guy that's impressed me the most too. But he's very physical as far as like with the striking and like when he goes after it in a main or when they're like I should say he's on a pay per view. He's always gone after it from a physical standpoint where the realism kind of ticks up a bit. Uh,
Okay. Who's that?
yeah, so I would say the person that's really surprised me is Sheamus. Uh,
Okay. Sheamus.
yeah. So speaking of a physical guy right now, I don't know much. I don't really remember him all that much. I just remember it was like a big Vince guy because he's big, he's gigantic physically.
Okay.
He's Irish, over the top Irish. So Vince loves that stuff. So it was like, okay, like I don't particularly remember him, but these last couple weeks, he's been doing some stuff I absolutely love. Uh, no Irish whips,
Even though he's Irish.
even though he is Irish. Him and Gunther probably wrestled the best match I've seen in the 4 weeks. Um,
Okay, you
so
like that, and what about it? Besides the no Irish whips.
so I like no Irish whips because you fall into this formula and they all kind of work the same when they get trained there. So they'll do the Irish whip and they'll kind of do the same transitions in it.
Okay,
Maybe they get a little lost and they'll call like up down Irish whip thing. Um,
becomes cookie cutter matches where it could be anybody in the ring.
yeah, and then instead they just went kind of strong style now with Sheamus and Gunter, and they didn't do any Irish whips. They were just beating the hell out of each other, and they were just stiffing each other with chops. And I was like, cool. Like I want to see more. I prefer like stiff chops over a bunch of formulatic Irish whips and dives. Because at the end of the day, if people are watching it and let's say they're skeptical to how realistic wrestling is, if you got two guys stiffing each other, like, well, they are beating the hell out of each other. So,
Mhm.
like this does have that realism to it. How about you? Anybody stand out to you that you've liked so far in the ring?
In the ring, I haven't seen enough of a lot of people yet
Hmm.
to know if how consistent they are. Some of the guys you mentioned, like the Bloodline, we've seen Solo Sokoa, I think, every week. Um, he seems to have he's the street fighter. He has that style. Also very quick, but not a brawling style, but a punishing striker.
Hmm.
I do like that he's committed to that. Sheamus is interesting because Sheamus is an old timer in the sense that if you've been away for WWE for maybe a decade, you might remember Sheamus. He's been around for a while. Um, it's interesting to me that he was, like you're saying, Vince liked him. He was a top guy at one point. He was, the top belt, and now he's kind of mid card. Maybe his character's a little better as a mid card guy that chases things rather than as the guy who's supposed to be oh so polished and pretty for the top belt. Maybe he's better as the guy who has more of maybe an underdog feel to him.
Yeah,
So I
he's
go ahead.
yeah, for sure. I like him in the mid card. Maybe that's a good point. You know, he's definitely not a top guy, and he can't be your top guy. But he's fine in the mid card, and he's done a good job, especially bringing Gunther along, who I didn't even really know before this, and he's their intercontinental champ, and they're treating him like a real champion because they main evented, and
Yeah,
they're adding a little prestige to that intercontinental title,
yeah,
which I think that's one of my things too. Is like if you're gonna have guys with belts, they have to be meaningful, and there's got to be stakes on the line for when they are out there. So there's got to be like a championship or number one contender or something along those lines. I'm cool with the Intercontinental title getting a little shine right now. That's one thing I wanted to just point out as
yeah.
we're kind of moving down here that I like that their belts feel meaningful. And then the Usos have both the Raw and SmackDown titles because that's too
For
many.
tag team, yes.
Yeah, the Usos having both the Raw and SmackDown, they should just really combine those, or everybody has fine, whatever. I'm cool with them having
Hmm.
all the belts like that, but we shouldn't have two sets of male tag team champs in WWE. I'm good with one, and they're
Okay.
doing the damn thing, the Usos.
A point about belts. We were talking about storylines before. Belts, when done correctly, are the easiest storyline. Everybody wants a belt. You know, why do these guys have heat with each other? Well, one of them's the champion and one of them wants to get there.
Right.
So when done correctly, your belts are a built-in storyline.
Hmm.
It's a built-in reason for guys to have a rivalry. It's a built-in reason for one guy to come after another guy. The belt. So if you do the belts properly and put a prestige to the belt, it really is. It's an instant storyline, and it still works. It's still as long as you keep the prestige of the belt going. WWE had a problem with this years and years ago that they were switching titles too rapidly, and it became like almost nonsense. And they're not the only ones to do this. Like guys would have a week long title reign, and they did this even with their main belts. Like it was such a big deal for a long time that Harley Race held the NWA title on 7 different occasions. And when Ric Flair broke it, and they combined NWA, WCW, the fact that Ric Flair was like a 15-time world champion, 16-time. The idea was that his title reigns lasted a while. Now you got guys, I'm hearing every now and then that this person is a 5-time champion. I'm like, who? 5 times?
Right.
How do you even win it once? He won it 5 times? And so if the belt cannot be the belt should be more of something that you reach for and strive and takes a lot of effort, but it should not be a hot potato.
Hmm.
I don't like hot potato titles.
No.
I like titles that mean something. And because of what I was saying before, your belt, if you do it right, is an instant storyline. If it's a hot potato, you've ruined the storyline of the belt, really. Because
Right.
then who cares who has the belt? Because then you start getting into, well, is it this guy's turn? What are they rolling dice backstage? It's like who gets to be champion this month?
I know. When you
So
start,
so if you take care of the prestige of your belt, it's an instant storyline and it still works after all these years in wrestling.
dude, it's such a good point when it's a roll of the dice because you know, it's still scripted, right? It's still scripted. So you would think because it's scripted, people should just have typically long reigns and there shouldn't be this hot potato aspect to it.
Hmm.
You don't, people should have it for a couple months and be defending it and like in order to win it. So it's pretty simple. And
If it's
I love,
worth something,
yeah.
it
And,
shouldn't be that easy to get a belt.
and one
It
of the
shouldn't
things
be casual.
we should casually just win the belt and then
Yeah.
have it for 3 weeks and drop it. It's interesting. You talked about like it's the simplest storyline, and oftentimes that's just the easiest. Like go with the simple storylines, and then let the workers kind of fill in their own pieces to that, so you don't have to
Sure.
worry so much about the storyline. So you don't have to go like Russo it up. You could just be like, yeah, like this guy's gonna win the title. Like I'm sure, and this is probably down the road. I'm kind of even talking about here with SmackDown, but I'm sure Cody Rhodes comes back and in WrestleMania wins the title from Roman Reigns. Like that's
Oh,
probably happening.
could work.
Yeah,
Now and that'll be a bigger deal if the title hasn't switched hands 5 times between now and WrestleMania.
exactly. Whoever wins it off Roman Reigns is going to be like, holy crap, Roman Reigns lost the title. Like, and that's
Yeah.
exactly what you want. Not like, oh yeah, like this guy's got it for a month or 2 months, or this guy's upset with his contract, so we'll give him the belt for a little bit. This guy's upset with
Mm-hmm.
this, or this guy's like a veteran, and we want to just have him have it because he hasn't had it yet. Like all this stuff. It's like no, Roman
I'm going
Reigns.
to tell you quickly my favorite Roman Reigns thing so far, even though we've only seen him on TV twice. And this is the doing more with less. And you mentioned maybe as a babyface, they were forcing him into that role and forcing him on the crowd. And now as a heel, he seems more comfortable. Um, when they had the entire bloodline in the ring for that big opening segment with Logan Paul a few weeks ago,
Yeah,
I cannot remember if Roman Reigns had a turn on the mic and if he did what he said, but I do remember when Logan Paul made the remark about who's the real tribal chief here? Is it you? And he points to Jey Uso, or is it you? And Jey Uso blows up, all animated, like he wants to go after him. And Roman Reigns, stoic, stone faced, no emotion, just stands there and then very, very slowly pivots his stance, turns his back to Logan Paul, and stares daggers through Jey Uso, who's jumping around. Like I I still don't remember if Roman said anything in that 20-minute opening segment, but I remember how, without saying a word, he said so much with his posture and his lack of expression and just playing that role the whole way. Like he was really good at that. And props to the WWE, their camera work, they got that so well in the ring. Like when they got close up on Roman and Jey face to face, you could see Jey animated and you could see Roman just staring at him and
We,
trying not to be animated.
I
And
think we
so
both,
props to Roman for that. And you know, that's the kind of thing that I think is keeping me interested in this product. Props to the WWE for their camera work and for getting that on screen.
sorry.
So I haven't seen him wrestle yet, but I've seen him do something that speaks to his character. And I wonder if he's going to be that way in the ring. If he's going to be, the kind of this emotionless, maybe stalking kind of wrestler. Maybe not so animated, maybe not so enthusiastic, maybe not so jumping around and in your face. Maybe he's going to have that same style of mat work when he gets in there. I don't know, but I could talk about the camera work and people being committed to their characters. I for a while, in fact, I could go into my favorite maybe single thing of these 4 weeks would have been
Let's hear it. Let's
an
hear the
example of
favorite
that.
thing.
Our introduction, our first impression of Liv Morgan was not very good. It was her coming out after a Ronda Rousey match with a baseball bat to try and sell their pay-per-view match. And it was hokey and it was awkward because obviously you're not going to hit someone with a baseball bat, but you have to carry it out to the ring and pretend like you are. She is committed to her character. She's a good athlete. Um, she she's the kind of wrestler who 20 years ago Vince would just make her into eye candy.
Right.
But she's blonde and she's in shape. I mean, athletic women, you can make them eye candy if you want to. You can just put extra makeup on them and everything. But she seems like she can go. I've seen her now in a backstage segment and in a match, and she can wrestle. They let her wrestle. She hits the spots, and this is another thing where the camera work and their production really enhances the storyline. Their gimmick with her is that she's supposed to be insane. She's supposed to be not all there.
Mm-hmm.
When they zoom in on her in the ring, she still has that crazy look on her face, like she's laughing as she's getting hit, or she's
Oh, you like the
laughing after
character.
taking a bump. She is committed to the character, and I think it works really well. From what I've seen of her so far, the hokiness of the first impression, I'll let it go because since then, she can work. She's committed to the character, and she's the type of character who is enhanced by the way WWE shoots their TV.
Yeah.
When they zoom in on her in the ring, she's not grimacing in pain.
That's a good
She's
point.
laughing at it because that's her character. She's committed.
That's a good point too. Like they didn't get super impatient and pull the plug after that terrible segment, which we both were like, the bat thing was really stupid. We're like, yep, this sucks. And then the match got bad reviews. I didn't even really watch it, but it got like bad reviews. So, like that's not a surprise. And
at the pay-per-view in October.
Yeah, but
Okay.
it's good that they have the patience to be like, if someone has a bad segment, don't pull the plug on them. Just like let it. Maybe there's somebody that she can do-si-do with that's going to be a little better than Ronda because Ronda hasn't been. A lot of people trash Ronda. I think she's good, but like she hasn't been a pro wrestler for as long as a lot of people have on that roster. So she can't be the person that carries dead weight per se. Like there's no between Ronda and Liv, it just didn't work, and that's okay. Like there could be
that may be a Clash of Styles thing. I mean, Ronda Rousey is the legit shoot fighter, and Liv Morgan is more your classic pro wrestler.
In that
She's supposed to be over the top and exaggerated.
In that women's division, I thought the best match I saw on any of the Smackdowns was with Natalya and Ronda Rousey.
Okay.
But that always makes sense because Ronda Rousey, a very legit athlete, a
Yes.
very legit, let's just say, pop star. Like somebody that you made it big in the UFC, and people would recognize from outside the WWE. That's why she's going to be a draw anyway.
Yep.
But
Exactly.
she matched up with Natalia, uh, and Natalia's like one of these people that's been wrestling since she's been like 15, and
Sure. Yeah.
she's been pro wrestling for 20 years. So when
Mhm.
she gets in there, she can kind of be the ring general and call the spots to Ronda to make her look like $1 million. And that match really worked. And maybe Liv isn't that person that's so good in the ring where she can call the spots and like you know wrestle with the mop, as they say, or the broom, or whatever that
Yeah.
saying is. I'm
Yeah.
It's
45-minute time limit draw with a coat rack.
coat rack or something, right?
Yep.
So yeah, so maybe I'm liking the old people. I'm liking Sheamus. I'm liking Natalia. These veterans have shown me a lot so far, and
Okay.
yeah,
Liv is now in a program with Sonya Deville. They seem to work well enough together. Um, I think there's been a lot of really good women's wrestling here. I do like the tag team that they got going on. It's Damage Control, um, which is Bailey, and then Dakota Kai and Io Sky. Dakota and Io have the belts. They're the tag team champs. Raquel Rodriguez and Shotzi. I'm impressed.
they love Shotzi, man. She's all over the TV.
Oh, and she visually, she's classic pro wrestling. She's wild colors, wild hair, the movements. It's the theater aspect of it where it's supposed to be a visual spectacle.
She's got
Um,
that whole thing down as far as what it's supposed to be like. I you could pick her out of a lineup. Like she doesn't look like all the other girls.
yep.
She's got the tank. She got like a zillion tattoos. Um, she's got a lot of that going for her. Like the little tank, which is hilarious. But I like, yeah, I think she's been all over the TV, and I have to say, like, she's been pretty good. And I think we talked about this before, but we're only 4 weeks in, so it's tough for us to give like the A's and the F's. But
Mhm.
I like the direction Shotzi's headed. Like, is
Yeah.
Shotzi, um, you know, is Shotzi the next Bret Hart? Like, I don't know. I don't think so. Like,
Shotzi screwed Shotzi.
he's screwed Shotzi. Oh my God. Good old Bret. Yeah, is she the next Bret Hart? I don't know. I don't know from a technical standpoint if she is, but she's at least pretty good in that 9 o'clock spot when we're kind of waiting for the main event to roll around, and we don't want to tune out. They'll throw her in. She shoots the cannon. She does her thing. Um,
Her partner, Raquel Rodriguez, for a woman wrestler, very tall, very physically imposing. Interesting pairing with her and Shotzi. Two really different styles, but they seem to have enough chemistry to be a plausible tag team. And they're again, the belts matter again. Like they're going after Damage Control because they want the belts, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out storyline wise. But in ring work, um, it's been pretty good so far. I will say lighting and camera work again. I alluded to this earlier that it requires it maybe puts a bigger challenge to the performers that you've
right.
got to hit your spots because if the camera's in the wrong spot and you miss, your TV audience is now looking at a botch.
Right.
I, there were two of those that come to mind. One was in the match that we both liked, Sheamus and Gunther for the IC title, where I still don't know if Gunther was supposed to be reaching for the rope and missing when he fake tapped twice to the cloverleaf.
The really confusing ending.
It was a confusing ending, and it was more confusing because the camera was right on him. So if he had been reaching for the rope, you'd see it. And the fact that he didn't get close to the rope and just hit the canvas, you see it.
Yeah.
And you're wondering, what are they doing? Is that part of it? Is he trying to fool Sheamus? Is he botching, reaching for the what's going on there? And the other one was in the number one contender fatal four way, where was it Rey Mysterio who did the dive onto the three other opponents on the outside?
Yes.
Okay. Two of them were close enough where Rey hit them. Solo was not close enough to be hit. The camera was right on him, so you couldn't miss it. Maybe if they don't have the mobile camera right on them and it's just a hard camera from wide angle, maybe it looks like, oh, Rey hit all three of them. When that camera's right up on them, you could see that Rey hits two of them, and Solo he's not in on the action. And
Yeah.
then Solo just falls down. Because at that point, he's been told you have to fall down because we're going to commercial break. And in a fatal four-way, if you don't fall down, now the match is very different if three guys have fallen down and one guy has not.
Yeah. That was a sloppy match. But it's a fatal four-way, and I think we talked about it that night, where like those are difficult to pull off because you have two people kind of dancing in there, and then you have two people laying outside, and then so you have to like transition one in and one out. And
but I
there-
separate that. I don't know if you do, but I separate that. It can be a difficult match to make coherent, and you could still have really good work in it.
yeah.
Like
It's-
I think there was pretty decent work in that match, except for that particular botch. In fact, there was a spot that we both really liked from Rey,
Oh, right,
which
right,
you
right.
really liked. So
Oh,
you know
yeah.
there was some good work there. I mean, describe that to people. It was
Yeah. I think Rey Mysterio did a unique dive in that it was like a face first baseball slide. And then he did like a front bump onto the guy. So instead of always doing, I'm going to start repeating myself at this point, but I'm just going to go ahead and go for it. I don't like when like wrestlers all do the same move. So you're watching at 8:30, 9:30, whatever it is, they're doing like the same transitions or they're doing the same move. So the dive is just really overexposed at this point. But Rey Mysterio did this baseball slide face first under it. I've never seen it before, and then landed on the guy. I was like, oh, cool. Like, there you go. That's a pro. That's a guy that's been around forever, knowing that I better switch it up because if I just do the dive over the top or, the suicide dive, which is like the Benoit thing, that's the only person I can remember doing it.
that was a good move. I remember the Rey Mysterio thing as well. I also remember because he tried it the very next week again, except the wrestler Gunther moved out of the way. Rey saw it in time and kind of somersaulted himself.
Yeah.
To land. But then he got drilled coming up out of the somersault. So it was a wrinkle on it. And that was another example of the WWE's staging made that move possible. There was plenty of room right side of the screen where the announce table is for Solo Sikoa to be prone on the floor and for the hard camera to capture Rey Mysterio running like he was going to dive over the top rope, but instead slide under the bottom rope. And the splash looked great on TV.
Right.
Like it was so well framed and well lit and really just with sort of the hard camera. Like the WWE sets up their ring and their ringside area so that stuff like that can happen and look good.
Yeah.
I think that gives guys a chance to be a little more creative if they're going to the outside rather than just creativity within the ring.
Right. Hey, Dom, I got a question for you.
Okay.
You want to take a quick commercial break here for about 5 minutes?
We could take a commercial break. Do we have a sponsor?
We brought to you by, we don't have one.
We don't have a sponsor. Okay.
We don't have one. We'll have to get one.
Okay.
Anybody out there, free sponsorship the first time. We'll do a shout out on the show.
All right. While we take the break, I could go through a rundown of the most recent SmackDown from last Friday. We were unable to go live for it,
That's
but I mean,
true.
I could fill 5 minutes.
Can you fill 5 minutes?
I can fill 5 minutes going through it.
I got a phone call I have here. So, Dom, can you
We're
take
live.
it
Life happens.
Can you take it away here?
I could take it away here. Just a brief recap of the most recent WWE Smackdown Live. Interesting opening with Sheamus versus Solo Sikoa. It was almost faction on faction, and it was some spillover from the prior week, that fatal four-way for the IC title, where Solo Sikoa and Sheamus were both involved in it. And the factions between the Brawling Brutes and the rest of the bloodline, minus Roman, it sort of broke down that match. Well, they got to continue that budding rivalry in the opening segment here, and Solo wins the match after some interference from Sami Zayn, which is interesting. You know, Sami is still trying to earn his bona fides in the bloodline. And of course, that also broke down with the entourages getting involved there in the match. Sort of a clever twist, in the sense that when the brawling happened on the outside, they made it so that both of the Brawling Brutes would have been thrown over the announce table, and then the announce table flipped and dumped on top of them. And that allowed for a 4-on-1 beatdown of Sheamus at the end, which sometimes I wonder why. Like, what is that? Unless it's just to make the bloodline appear more heel. Maybe they're trying that because their two main rivals for the tag team titles are New Day, which is supposed to be baby faces. So maybe they're trying to create enough contrast there where, you know, the Usos are heels. Bloodline is supposed to be a heel faction. And they've got the big pay-per-view coming up with Logan Paul versus Roman Reigns. And I think they're trying to sell Logan Paul as the baby face. And so, you know, you're trying to create that contrast that the bloodline are heels. And so this kind of cowardly 4-on-1 attack trying to injure Sheamus is maybe trying to sell these guys are the heels. We got a Bray Wyatt backstage promo. One of the things John and I talked about a couple of weeks ago was the Bray Wyatt promo, at least from my perspective, seemed awkward, where he ended that episode of SmackDown in the ring addressing the fans. It seemed like he was cut off at the end of it. And maybe he was, and maybe that was part of a storyline, because Bray seemed to apologize for getting cut off the prior week. His tone in the backstage promo was a lot different than what it had been in the ring, as if they're trying to turn him heel too. It's like everybody's got to be a heel all of a sudden. And you realize that they have to do that because if Bray is in the ring again, people are going to cheer for him. He's going to look like a baby face. If they want him to be a heel, they're going to have to get him out of those situations where it's just him in the ring. The crowd loves him. So maybe a good pivot there, having Bray follow his in-ring feel-good return with a more heelish vignette. The Liv Morgan and Sonya Deville, they went to a double count-out in that match. That was a continuation of the previous week where they had a backstage altercation. I do like that dynamic is pretty good, and you know, of course, I've said I like what Liv is doing with the character. She is committed to the personality her character is supposed to have, and how that's the personality is supposed to carry through during the in-ring, the matches, the physicality. Post-match, Liv superplexes Sonya onto some steel chairs that were spread over the ring, which is a great spot. And, you know, Liv has the grin on her face as she's taking a good bump, too. We got Braun Strowman. John, we got Braun Strowman and MVP in a promo last week. is they're trying
Really?
to build Braun Strowman versus Omos,
Hmm.
the Nigerian giant, um, for the Crown Jewel pay-per-view. It was just sort of a stare down, trying to say like, hey, you're used to Braun Strowman being the biggest guy in the ring, not anymore. They got into a little bit of a shoving match, but of course, they can't let him go at it. They got to save that for the pay-per-view. Um, Drew McIntyre in a vignette. Um, they're apparently going to go carry and cross Drew McIntyre again at Crown Jewel. So, like we thought, the Extreme Rules was not their blow off. Um, the car accident a couple of weeks ago was not their blow off. This is supposed to be a continuing feud. If they can keep it interesting and keep the wrinkles going, where it's just not them regurgitating the same match again. It's boring when all the cookie cutter wrestlers do the same match to match. It's also boring when the same two guys do the same match for 2-3 months. So if they can make something different at it, okay, Drew McIntyre and Karrion Kross, let's see it. They're going steel cage. But in one sense, we like to say here at Don't Bury the Lead, don't bury the lead. Are they burying the Extreme Rules pay-per-view by a month later putting the same two guys in a steel cage because now they got to settle it extreme style?
Right.
I don't know, but it seems to me maybe they're kind of burying their own pay-per-view.
I don't know.
Great.
Do you know anything about Crown Jewel, or do you know anything?
Apparently, it's overseas. It's supposed to be taking place in maybe Saudi Arabia or something. So there's kind of the Crown Jewel, the name with it.
So,
It's new to me. I like Crown Jewel is not a long-standing WWE pay-per-view that I remember. It's not a long-standing WCW pay-per-view that they co-opted when they bought WCW. Like NXT just ran Halloween Havoc. Halloween Havoc was WCW's biggest pay-per-view of the year. So I get that where that name comes from and trying to get that lineage. I don't know anything about Crown Jewel. Do you know anything about it?
yeah. So Crown Jewel, basically Crown Jewel, the Saudi government pays a ton of money, like a boatload, to Vince, and I'm just
Okay.
gonna say Vince, to put on a show, and they will make requests for like what they want to see
Okay.
and like, when they kind of want to. So they kind of have some influence like over how the show is laid out and everything like that.
Okay. The
So
House of Sword is now guest booking a WWE pay-per-view. Let's see how this goes.
they like a great example was they had this guy and he was a sumo wrestler and he never wrestled before and he came out and he like jobbed in like this battle royale. It's like, who the hell was this guy? It's like, well, this the king or prince or whatever of Saudi Arabia really likes Yokozuna, so they need to bring somebody like Yokozuna there because it's like one of his requests. So they
Okay.
brought a big sumo wrestler.
Okay.
Um, Other stuff is they all sit in the front of like the royal family or whatever sits in the front row where all the seats are, and people are actively have their backs turned sometimes and not watching, and they're like sitting on couches because it's just like, this is our show, like I'm the prince, like I'm part of
Okay.
the family. And then you have like all the regular fans around them. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is it's usually not a great show, and all of the workers hate it because it's like you got to fly into Saudi Arabia and then fly out, and like,
Major jet lag.
mhm.
That's not only a long flight, but it's time zones away.
And there was even like at one point there was a disagreement between Vince and the Prince, and they like delayed the flight for like 12 hours while they were on the tarmac, like just like they had like some sort of argument to like whatever delay the flight.
Okay.
So yeah, like not a lot of people. I mean, they're doing this with golf as well, right? Where the
The
Saudi
the, the
government
Saudi tour. Yeah.
is shoveling out so much money that they kind of are taking over these programs. But I think it's cool. But it it is one of these things where it's like a random show that comes up, and too many pay-per-views. They always try to cram stuff in. There always needs to be less, but they want to also get paid that sweet, sweet Saudi money.
Okay. It
So,
seems like there's decent matches on the card. I mean, they've been saving and milking and trying to play the long game and the slow burn with Logan Paul, Roman Reigns for this.
yeah,
So, I mean, they're expecting some sort of, they've invested enough in that where this has got to be, this match has to deliver.
that is wild. This is going to be his second pro wrestling match, second or third
For
Logan Paul.
Logan Paul. Okay.
And he will be main eventing a pay-per-view, which is
Well,
just
I was going to get to it in the rundown. He was on the most recent SmackDown, and it was a really interesting segment. They did Dakota Sky and Io Sky championship match with Bailey versus Raquel Rodriguez and Shotzi. Sky pinned Shotzi with a top rope moonsault after some interference. I like it. And it was also one of those things where Sky went for the moonsault earlier on Raquel, but Raquel rolled out of the way. Sky landed on her feet. So it's one of those things. And I hope this is not becoming cliche, but you miss your big spot early, and then when you finally hit it, it's a big pop for it.
yeah.
That works again, but if it doesn't become formulaic, like it's they missed it, but they're supposed to miss it because they're not supposed to hit it. They have to miss it. That tells you, that tells you it's halftime. Like when they miss the big spot, now you know, like, okay, where you are in the match, like it's a mile marker or something.
Right.
Ronda Rousey backstage promo. She seems like she's turning heel. What I was going through while you were on break there for a minute, they seem like they're turning everybody heel. Bray Wyatt, they're now trying to turn heel. Bloodline that people cheer, they're trying to emphasize that these guys are heel. Ronda Rousey, it seems like she's going heel now too. I mean, is everybody a heel? What's going on? Rey Mysterio not a heel. They did have him fight Ludwig Kaiser with the rest of Imperium was out there. Ray wins by a pinfall. And it was kind of an interesting nod the way it happened because Imperium was there and had been interfering. Ray's on the outside, picks up the steel chair, smacks it, throws it down, then hits the deck. He does the Eddie Guerrero fake getting hit by the chair. Ref sees it. Ref turns around, hears the chair shot, turns around, sees Ray on the ground, and Gunter and whoever the other Imperium lackey is, kind of standing over Ray. Ref throws the rest of Imperium out of ringside, and that allows Ray to go one-on-one with Ludwig for the rest of the match and get the win, and I like it. And then, of course, Logan Paul comes out to do a promo. Jey Uso jumps him from behind and starts beating the heck out of him. Sami Zayn, of course, who's supposed to be keeping an eye on Jey, runs down and tries to get Jey to calm down a little bit. So Jey fakes leaving the ring and turns to attack Logan Paul again. The setup was that he got Logan Paul sprawled out in the corner, sitting there, and he did that charge into the ring where he basically smashes the guy's face because the guy's head is against the middle turnbuckle.
Right.
So it's like the old Rikishi Sting face almost, but for somebody who's not 400 pounds or whatever. Still a lot of impact. I get the move. Believable. So Jey fakes leaving the ring and goes to do it again, but he's waited too long. He goes to charge. Logan Paul springs out of the corner so that Jey misses it. Jey hits the turnbuckle, bounces off, and Logan Paul nails him with the one lucky shot punch. And now Jey is sprawled out in the ring as the show goes off the air. And now Sami Zayn is looking terrified. Not only that Jey is in the ring, but also that Roman has told him, do not let Jey jump Logan Paul tonight. We want him to be, we don't want any excuses going into Crown Jewel. So Sami has not fulfilled his duty to Roman, and Jey's been knocked out, and Logan Paul looks strong, and Sami looks incompetent. So a lot of going on there. But, it was the idea that they have to make they have to make Logan Paul do something in a ring for him to be more than a celebrity. And I guess this was the best way to do it. You know, he landed the one lucky shot, which has sort of been his theme. Like, all I got to do is get one lucky shot, one lucky
Uh,
shot. Well, there it was, the one lucky shot. We saw it. Decent show. Overall, it seemed like this show was the sequel to the previous week. There was so much that was like a direct line from the previous week.
okay. Well, that's
And
good.
so,
It's
okay,
cohesive.
I get it. It worked.
I mean,
Not a bad show overall. I mean, I don't have too many favorites from it, and nothing that was bad from it. I mean, other than, you know, this show solidified for me how committed Liv Morgan is to that character, and kind of won me over, because now I've seen her in something hokey that really doesn't fit her character, but I've now seen her in two physical segments where she's committed to it and it works.
so that's good
Decent
to
show
hear.
overall.
That's good to hear that like Liv has made that comeback. Is there anybody? And I think we've been pretty positive, and we want to just like we both like the show so far. We're only 4 weeks in. We're not the experts. We're not going to like know it all and be like everything's horrible. Ugh, I'm on the internet. Like I don't want to do that. But it's not all good.
No,
Is there anybody that you're like, what is this person? What are they doing? Or even like a segment or any aspect of it that you don't like?
I'm not a fan of squash matches on your big live TV programs. Like,
Yeah.
to me, SmackDown's an event, and I know they have a lot of television, live television, and they need. I'm not a fan of like Hit Row getting that squash win over Los Lotharios. Like,
It's not helping Hit Row at all. That's like the one. Uh,
right?
those are the two people I'm on that are on the show, and I'm like, they don't look like they are ready.
And
Like,
then they were in almost a squash segment themselves when Legado del Fantasma jumped them and just took them out so easily. And then we saw the show on October 14th. This was the last one we did live. They were almost in a squash match against LDF, where LDF, just
jump them, right?
well, not this was the thing in the ring where they got to blow off in the ring from the jumping the week before, but it wound up just being overwhelmed, so they were almost squashed themselves. I know not everything can go 10 minutes. You need shorter bits on your TV shows. You're running 2 hours.
Right.
Some things got to get in and got to get done quickly. But I'm not a fan of squash matches, because I don't think it. The purpose of the old squash match is because on WWF Saturday morning syndicated TV, you typically weren't going to see Hulk Hogan or some of the big guys really wrestle. They were always saving that for. The gimmick was, you got the big stuff if you paid your money to Madison Square Garden, or when they started doing pay-per-views on pay-per-view. Your Saturday morning syndicated stuff, you got a lot of squash matches, maybe one really good match. So that was kind of the birth of the squash match, because you wouldn't do that to your paying audience in an arena. You would do that to your TV audience that's getting it for free, simply because the squash matches make a clear delineation who's strong, who's weak, and it allows you to get more guys onto your 1 hour TV program if some matches last a minute and a half. But it's for building a character and building storylines. I don't like squash matches, so some
Yeah.
of that doesn't work for me. Um, the stuff that they're slow burning for me does not work yet. But I'm going to say yet, because I'm a new fan and it's only been a month. Bray
Yeah.
Wyatt, not working for me, but I'm going to say yet, because I'm going to trust that they have a plan. Roman Reigns, the character works, but it's been a slow burn. He's on only 2 of the 4 SmackDowns. He's not wrestling. Man, when he finally gets in the ring, he better be awesome.
Yeah, so back to what you were saying too. Like, Bray Wyatt's an interesting one. Because I think we both wanted we're this just isn't our style, and it's a unique thing, and there's definitely a need for it. But it would have been really cool if he didn't do the supernatural thing, and he just came out and he's like, "I'm just like a little weird or whatever," and I'm Bray
Yeah.
Wyatt. That would have been like a little bit better. But um, let's see
It
where
may
that
be
goes.
going there. The
Maybe
vignette for the most recent SmackDown was a clear break from what happened earlier. And I don't know if you heard it, but I was saying it for our, break recap. The live return was in the ring and everybody's cheering. And okay, it's the feel good movement, but it looks like they want him to be a heel. So his second on camera appearance had to be a vignette because if they put him in the ring again, people are just going to cheer because they love seeing him back. So they had to get him away from the crowd to do this vignette that was recorded because it looks like they want him to be heel. I don't know if it's going to go supernatural or just be really esoteric and just kind of cultish. I mean, you can go cultish without being supernatural. You can be tribal without being supernatural. You can do that. You can just be a sinister guy without being supernatural. It looks like they want him to go heel, and to do that, they have to be very careful about putting him in the ring because it's like when Ric Flair got older and would go out to the ring and was supposed to be a heel. And everybody was so happy to see Ric Flair that they cheered. And you could see almost he's getting frustrated, like he's supposed to be a heel. And people are like, it's Ric Flair! Yay! And he's like, no, I'm the bad guy. Yay, we love you, Rick. I'm the heel. And
that's the thing about Bray, like you said. That's an interesting way to make him a heel when he really should just be a super big time baby face with the cool theme song
the
coming
crowd
out.
wants babyface at least now because he's back. But WWE doesn't want him there long term, or at least not medium long term.
He's got the thing where they put the cell phone up and it's like the lantern. Hello, they're going to still do that,
Yeah,
That's
right. Well, then he may have to ditch the lantern because getting the crowd involved is usually a babyface move.
Sure.
Heels usually want antagonism with the crowd. You know this. You've been in the ring. And I'm going to spill the beans here. My friend John, he's been an indie pro wrestler for an indie promotion here, and he plays a heel. He plays a really cool heel that I like because the heel is resentful. It's not your aloof heel, although his manager is an aloof heel. But it's the resentful heel, and it's the like applauding for himself, and then the crowd does it, and he goes, "Shut up!" Like he resents the crowd because he thinks they don't really mean it. So like the heel is supposed to antagonize, not welcome the crowd. So that's gonna be like you just brought up. That's gonna be a challenge if they want Bray to be a heel. He's going to have to antagonize the crowd, not welcome them. It's like why I'm wondering if LA Knight's going to be heel or face, and it looks like face because they're doing the feelers with him, getting the crowd to play along with him rather than him antagonize them. So, I mean, maybe I spilled too much there. I don't know if you want to talk to your time in the ring, and if you notice similarities between what you did as a wrestler in ring for a promotion and what you see on screen. But where do you think this goes?
That's interesting. Well, I was in front of like 100 people.
So, it's okay. Small crowds can be into it, and big crowds can be sitting in our hands with canned cheers.
Yeah. So, like, it's interesting. Kind of what you're talking about is like all these tweeners, but like one of the focuses I would have would be you kind of would have to boo me, or you'd have to be like a resentful character. And like there was times where I was kind of like getting over a little bit as a baby face, and I would just squash it right away. Like I had like a section. There's a crowd I can remember. There was these guys and they're drinking, and they're pounding the beers, like yeah, woo, or they're just kind of really I don't know. They were just like into me for some reason at the time. So they're like, I grabbed one of their beers. I was like, should I chug it? They're like, yeah, should I chug it? I'm like, and then I just like slammed it on the ground. I was like, no, shut up. And then they're like, oh, like I like destroyed their feelings. Or like
Right.
I destroyed their
Antagonized.
momentum. And then they're like booed me for the rest of the show. So it's just like making sure like don't lean too much into when people are cheering you. It's tempting, right? But like you
Yeah.
really have to play that role. And I don't like the tweener stuff with WWE, which they kind of will have a tendency to do. I would prefer them to be like, this dude's a heel, this dude's a face. Like Gunter's a heel. He's playing a heel. He's slow. He's boring.
Mhm.
You're like, this guy's in all black. Yeah, he's the heel. And then so you don't really want too much like of the back and forth. So I wish they were. Maybe that's another thing that like I would say I wish they improved on is like a defiant baby face and a defiant heel roles.
It's a negotiation though, because you're talking about if you want your crowd to be into the show, then you have to judge what the crowd is into and what they're not. Maybe the crowd is cheering something that someone's doing, even though they're supposed to be a heel, and that's got to tell you something as the writers and creative. Maybe we need to pivot. And frankly, I don't know if you followed it closely enough. Maybe that's what happened with Roman Reigns. That after stubbornly trying to make him a babyface, they realized, you know, buyer and seller. It's always a negotiation in a market.
Mm-hmm,
Always a negotiation.
mm-hmm,
And maybe you're haggling a bit, and maybe that's where the tweener stuff comes in, is the haggling. Crowd said, you say we want to present this guy as a babyface. Crowd says we're not buying it. We're booing. He's a heel. Okay, ball's in your court, seller. What do? Do you keep forcing babyface you to try to turn heel and then see if the crowd goes with the heel? So there's a negotiation there. And I'm interested to see how the WWE creative negotiates this with the crowd. The crowd wants to cheer Roman Reigns. He's supposed to be a heel. The crowd wants to get involved and cheer Bray Wyatt, but it looks like they want him to be a heel. The
mm-hmm.
crowd probably wants to cheer Ronda Rousey, but it looks like they want her to be a heel.
Ronda's weird.
Let's see.
Yeah, yeah. Ronda's weird. Because I think she's probably going to get different reactions from different crowds.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, that's a good point. Like, I mean, you think of it like this. I think this is kind of a new creative beginning for WWE with Vince out of the picture. So
Yeah.
you're kind of like, and you've got two new guys in LA Knight and Bray Wyatt. Quite frankly, he's new to the scene because he's been fired or whatever for a year, and now he's back.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you assess where the crowd's headed with it, give them a little bit of babyface, give them a little bit of heel, and then turn it one way or the other, depending
Mm-hmm.
on which one's working better. And
I see
quite
that working more with LA Knight than with Bray Wyatt. It looks like they've invested too much in Bray Wyatt to be wishy-washy now.
mhm.
They've got to pick a side. They've got to pick a direction. Like we were talking earlier, it's
What is
direction.
what's the crowd? What do you think the crowd is? Because I know LA Knight. I'm going to just keep talking to you about him because I think that's your
Okay.
boy, LA Knight. What do you think? Like, how's the crowd responding to him? As I mean, he's a new
They
guy.
like the
Probably like,
yeah. Enough of
yeah.
them responded with the yeah.
We both love the yeah. I
Yeah.
knew that would work the second he did that. Was like, okay, cool.
So, and that tells me they're going to try for babyface, because you wouldn't do that. I mean, what you would do is you just go yeah, and then you drop the mic and throw it. You wouldn't go yeah and kind of wait and gesture to the crowd. So
Yeah.
that tells me they're trying babyface. But he's the kind of character new to the program overall, low to mid card, where if his gimmick isn't working, it's easier to pivot a low to mid card guy. You're not as committed. Bray Wyatt, they're committed. They've got to, they've now shown him babyface promo, heel promo. They've got to commit and they've got to do something, because, like you, I think tweener stuff makes for poorer storylines, because if a tweener is in your storyline, then you almost have to find other tweeners,
You know,
or
Dom, one
you
of the
have to rely on the other person in the storyline to drive the dynamics. Your
you,
tweener is against a heel now. Okay, your tweener's now a baby face, but that means your heel is driving that dynamic. Your tweener's against the baby face. Okay, your tweener's now the heel, but that means the other guy is driving the dynamic. And so mid card guys can go tweener because the main event guy can drive that dynamic. Bray Wyatt, they're going to have to commit and make a bet with him. So I want to see where they go, and I hope it's not tweener,
well, you know, it's
because
almost like
that's going to put the main driver of the dynamic on the other guy. I want to see if they're investing this much screen time and vignettes and promos into Bray Wyatt, then they've got to pick a side with Bray Wyatt and make him be the driving dynamic, at least 50-50 in whatever feud he gets into.
right. And you know, one of the things is we kind of talked about it earlier, so I want to touch back on what we talked about earlier.
Sure.
When you talked about the belts and them having some importance, and that being the simplest storyline, and it's always effective. We talked about it at the top of the show. Roman Reigns, good champ. He has the belt. Like that. So then when you go into these complicated storylines, very, very complicated with Bray Wyatt and the supernatural, and is he a baby face or a heel, and what direction they're going to just feed the people. This is the good guy, this is the bad guy. And then they're fighting for this title. Mm-hmm. I don't need all this supernatural, multiple personality. Is he a baby face? Is he a heel? Excuse me. Oh, boy.
Unless the two split personalities, because Mick Foley did that pretty well, where whether he was Cactus Jack or Mankind or Dude Love, it was like a different guy.
It was amazing.
And that worked. And that may be the only time I've seen that work. But that's another thing. That's another aspect of us doing sort of a 1 month recap here. Is a lot of the stuff we're talking about, and you said this way early on, is a lot of what we're talking about is, can we see a direction, not can we give a firm grade so far? Because every grade I'm going to give it's been 4 weeks, incomplete. I'm going to give a grade on direction. The grades are going to be based on, do I see a direction? And so I'm going to be interested to see in what direction do they give to Bray Wyatt.
What about your boy, Karrion Kross? Who
again, I don't see a direction here. He's in vignettes. He jumps people from behind. His valet interferes to help him win the only match he's been in the last month, which is a pay-per-view I did not see, but he won. He's been in a car accident. He was talked about in the most recent show by Drew McIntyre. I don't know. That's really incomplete. And not only is it incomplete, but it's incomplete to the point where I don't know the direction. So that's really hey, I got nothing.
Yeah.
I can't, he looks the part.
Except for the
Killer Kross has a name. Killer Kross has some cachet to him. We mentioned it on a previous live episode. We were doing a recap. Don't bury the lead. Killer Kross was on a pay-per-view with Ric Flair a couple of months ago. So he's got some cachet. He's got the size. He's got the look. Maybe he has the athleticism he can go, but that's a real incomplete for me. One thing you were bringing up, I want to throw this in there, since we've now talked about Drew McIntyre and brought him in. He's another one of those guys where the WWE's TV production really shows the stiff work and the hard hitting and some of the real stiff shots that some of these guys take. When Karrion Kross was whipping Drew McIntyre leading up to their pay-per-view with that strap that would become part of their strap match, you could see the red lashes across his back after the strap got up, because they were right on him. Same thing with Sheamus. When Sheamus took enough chops to his chest, where you could see not just the, his pale white skin, the redness and almost the bruising, but some abrasions there. The show is shot so well as a pro wrestling TV show. And, some of the real stiff work in the ring benefits from that.
Yeah. Yeah, for
So
sure.
I do appreciate that with Drew and with Sheamus. And it's funny you mentioned at the beginning. Vince loves the Irish wrestling. Vince loves the ethnic thing. Vince thinks it's 1975, and he's got to have a character for every ethnic group.
He's like Archie Bunker.
Well, Bruno Sammartino. When Vince signed Hulk Hogan, okay, the idea was Hulk's real name is Terry Bollea. Okay. And the story goes that Vince goes, I've already got an Italian guy. You're going to be Hulk Hogan. Dye your hair red. And the now Hulk Hogan says, Vince, my hair's falling out. If I dye it, it may lose the rest of it. So can I keep it blonde? Okay, fine. Keep it blonde, but you're Hulk Hogan. He was trying to go Irish. Vince loves the ethnic thing because it's built-in tribalism. It's built in group, out group. And in a strange way in society in 2022, like hyper tribalism is the in thing again. For better or for worse, I think for worse. I'm not into that. Is a societal thing. I'm not into, if you're against it, you call it woke. If you're for it, you call it social justice. I'm not into the tribalism, and especially the hyper ethnic about it and the hyper categorization. But I won't deny that it's an old wrestling trope, and maybe it works again. I don't know, but eventually there's got to be something more interesting about a faction than, hey, they all have German names and we gave them accents for when they're on camera. Right. It's got to be something more than that.
Yes, that's true. They have a fine top guy as their worker. They have a fine intercontinental champ as their worker.
Gunther, I like it.
Oh, I'm glad we're talking about Gunther and Sheamus and the tribalism, because there was one aspect of SmackDown that I did notice that bothered me.
Okay.
And they piped in crowd noise for sure during Gunther's promo, because the way that they were booing and cheering suddenly and looking around and nobody was reacting.
Okay.
That really, I've made myself ignore it, so I doesn't ruin the show for me when it happens. I hate all the pipe stuff. I think it would go better if it's flat and the crowd isn't cheering. It doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. But don't insult me with the crowd oohs and ahs and the boos if they're not there. Just let it be, and then you could be like, it's still a good promo. The crowd was a little stunned. They didn't know what to do.
The crowd can't be amped up for 2 hours straight.
They're not screaming for 2 hours straight. Yeah, and if the promo, and you can look back at that promo and be like, it could still be good if they're quiet. And
especially since it's the heel promo.
Right. It's a
the crowd's not supposed to be into the heel. I mean, he can just be arrogant and aloof and booming on the mic and get across being a heel. You could even do that if you were skilled enough as a babyface. You shouldn't be relying on the crowd reaction for your promo. You should be able to sell your character whether or not the crowd is doing it for you.
Mm-hmm. Hey Dom, how you feeling, man? What do you have any final thoughts for kind of as we go on here?
I hit what was the lead for me, and I think that in kind of stating my case for it, I've touched on all the main things that I want. You made your case that you're interested in the wrestling in the ring, and you've touched on a lot of the wrestlers and whether or not you like what's going on, not like what's going on. Are there people that you think we didn't get to yet, who we should? We don't have to mention everybody, because clearly not everybody is used equivalently.
Mm-hmm.
Paul Heyman, we touched on briefly. I don't know. It's weird. I think initially Paul Heyman with Roman Reigns made sense, but now that there's enough personalities in the bloodline,
They can
um,
carry it for them. Yeah.
they maybe don't need Heyman. Heyman to me seems superfluous at this point, unless they still want to make believe that Roman Reigns just doesn't talk. And so somebody has to talk for Roman, because the dynamic that they're trying with Roman does not extend to the rest of the bloodline. The bloodline, they're creating them so that they have personalities and can do that on the mic. Like Sami Zayn has a personality and he does it on the mic. Jay has a personality, does it on the mic. Jimmy has some of that personality. He's almost the Ron Simmons who just goes, damn. You know, back
Yeah.
in the APA days.
Yes, I know
So
exactly what
Jimmy's got his personality and he does it. Solo doesn't have a personality on the mic yet, but he has a personality in the ring. So um,
I
none
would
of
say
the rest
this.
of the bloodline needs a spokesperson. So I
Yeah.
wonder if they're going to phase that out with Roman, or if they want to keep that as a special thing just for Roman. That like Roman is so cool that he has like his personal assistant Paul Heyman. I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm waiting to see where that goes, but I mean, I don't think Paul brings much to that dynamic at this point. We know who Roman is, and the other guys have carved out their own
As
places.
long as there's that inner fight between that whole stable, that's good. Um,
I like
if
the
it is,
awkwardness.
yes, but if it is just Roman Reigns and he's going to do his own thing, Heyman should be there to talk
Okay.
for him. I
Okay.
just don't. I just think he needs a mouthpiece, which is fine. And
Okay.
I think we need more mouthpieces in WWE. Quite frankly, there's got to
All
be
right.
some old guys sitting around doing some stuff, and Dutch Mantel's doing. He's got to be available right now. Like he could be a mouthpiece for somebody. Like there's more people out there that I'd prefer just have mouthpieces.
That was
Um,
the role of the manager in the old days, especially the territory. Because what would happen is, you would go to your regional territory and a new wrestler would come in and the crowd didn't know what to do with them. But the crowds knew their local managers.
be Jimmy Hart, or
You knew your local manager. And if the local manager was a heel and they brought this new wrestler out with the heel manager, the crowd knew heel. And if they brought out the guy with their babyface manager for that territory, then and so yeah, the role of mouthpiece used to be important because it gave the crowd some sort of reference point. And
mhm.
maybe that works, and maybe I wonder what Paul Heyman's role is at this point. If after all this time they still don't trust Roman Reigns on the mic, then I wonder how long that's going to last. If it's because they're trying to make Paul Heyman his personal assistant, like Roman Reigns is so great that he has a personal assistant.
Well, it's like this.
Maybe.
Heyman can shoot a 15-minute promo and you can be watching it and time flies by and you're like, that was smooth. I don't even know what he was talking about. That's what makes him super valuable. And yeah, so
He was with Brock Lesnar earlier, right?
he was with Brock Lesnar for years, and then he was with Roman Reigns now for about 2-3
Okay.
years.
The pairing with Brock Lesnar had another important feature of having a mouthpiece. You've got a contract with Brock Lesnar where he appears 12 times a year, but you don't want your TV audience week to week to forget about him. So you tie him to Paul Heyman, and then when Brock's not there, you still send Paul Heyman out.
Right.
So it's like you're getting Brock, even though Brock's not there. So that's a useful dynamic. But again, if Paul Heyman is only going to be there when Roman Reigns is there, standing next to Roman Reigns, then I wonder how that dynamic's going to be going forward. This is another one of those yet things. I mean, as cool as Roman is with his stature and his stone face, and I'll say it again, the way he just slowly pivoted and stared down his own stablemate Jey Uso in that Logan Paul in-ring promo.
Mm-hmm.
As cool as that was, I got to see him wrestle, and I want to see if he's got his own personality.
Right. 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 Well,
And maybe that's the lead going forward. We've watched for a month. We're into it. We like the direction more than not, but there are some questions.
Let's look something. I wonder, so they're building toward Crown Jewel right now,
Yep.
right? Is that what it seems to be?
First weekend of November, I think, is Crown Jewel. So we're going to get
Oh.
2 more Smackdowns.
Oh, wow. You want to talk about, no wonder they're struggling. They just had a pay-per-view. They're going to jump
every
right
month.
into another one?
Every month.
Okay, so yeah, no wonder it's going to be a little touch and go here. All right. Well, we'll continue to follow SmackDown up into Crown Jewel. I think if I'm not mistaken, it's a very strange time of day that they wrestle it too, because it's night in Saudi
Time
Arabia.
difference. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see when it is.
If it's nighttime here, if it's a primetime audience in the US, it's going to be like 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning in Saudi Arabia.
It is. This one says 12 p.m. Eastern.
So it'll be primetime Saudi Arabia. So it'll have to get it to be noon here. Yeah.
Noon here, 9 a.m. in. I don't mind that. 12 o'clock. Shoot. That's really not too bad.
Yeah, that's not too bad. So if we were gonna go home, if there's nothing else here, I would say my go home finisher here is WWE Smackdown. Don't bury the lead. It's been better than not. I'm glad to be back into it. This has been a good idea. Thanks for asking me to do this, and I'm interested to see not only where our show continues, but where the WWE product goes. I'll keep watching and keep doing this. We're gonna miss Halloween weekend, the Friday there, but getting into November, I'm game to keep doing recaps, instant recaps of SmackDown. It's been an interesting enough show where and I think we have enough interesting things to say about it where we can throw 45 minutes on the end of a SmackDown show and
no problem. We could do 2 hours, brother.
Oh yeah, I mean we could
keep going. I'll keep going. No, tonight I have to go to bed because I have work. But
sure, yeah, same thing. But I mean, my go home is it's been interesting so far. This has been a neat idea. Thanks, and I'm looking forward to another week of this, another month of this, another who knows how long. As long as the show is interesting enough where it's worth watching it and then commiserating.
Dom, yeah, for sure. It's been great hanging out with you, doing this. We're only 4 weeks in, and my review as well. Let's keep going. Let's keep watching it. It's been a pretty good show. It's been surprisingly good for what it's been. And doing these recaps has also added an element to it that I really enjoy. So thanks for doing this with me, Dom. And that is my go home. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Don't Bury the Lead. I'm here with Dom Scarcella. My name is John Zindel. We'll be here every Friday night after SmackDown. If we're not here, we'll be posting other videos on our channel. Like, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family. Thank you very much and have a fine evening. Bye, everybody. Bye.